we want to know from each of you, maybe we can start with you, Barry, how each of you got involved within the film industry, and then more specifically into makeup and hair design.
I was a theater person. I started working in theater as a hairstylist, but also as a wig maker. So I spent a lot of time in New York working in a studio building wigs and then running Broadway shows. And I also worked in the music industry during that time, kind of alternating between Broadway and touring with an artist. So I hadn't really done film at all. It was only 6 years ago that I did my first TV show, and I fell in love immediately, and it hasn't stopped since.
How about you, David?
I had started out in front of the camera. I had been a model and an actor when I was in high school and in college. I took a brief respite from the entertainment business to try to find some form of sobriety because I was living the life. And while I was in Seattle, I sold real estate and I decided I was coming back to the entertainment business and started modeling again to make my way back into the industry. And pretty quickly, I was doing a show for Chanel and up there, and they were short makeup artists. And I said, "Oh, for Christ's sake, give me a brush. I've done makeup." And the lady running the show actually ran beauty for Chanel. And she said, "You're a makeup artist. I've only seen this twice in my life. I knew Wade Bandy, and what I'm seeing in you is very similar. What you're doing with this makeup, they were doing on the runways of Paris 2 weeks ago. There's no way you would know that." And she kind of bugged me to work for them. And I did. And quickly after working for them and traveling around as a makeup artist, going to just, department stores, I did a lady's makeup who had very little means. She wasn't going to be able to buy the products that they had. And when I finished the makeup, she looked in the mirror and she started to cry. And I said, "Oh shit, it's makeup. I'll take it off. It's not a big deal." And she said, "No, you made me look like a movie star, but more than that, you made me feel like the woman that my husband married 8 years ago before 4 kids. And I want him to see I'm still that woman." And that made me realize in that moment, the impact of how we look on the outside can change how we feel. And it literally, from that moment on, I knew that was what I should be doing.
Wow, that's an incredible kind of origin story. And for those that don't know, David has worked on probably 2 of Ryan and I's favorite shows. Number 1 being Feud, and then Documentary Now. Those are just 2 incredible shows that offer some of David's work. Incredible. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later as well. But had to mention that briefly because his work made me cry just watching those shows. Jason, same question for you. How did you get started?
Well, I was working at Home Depot up until about 3 months ago. And I'm kidding. I just lucked into this, man. I knew how to mix color. No, I started when I was about 13 years old, and I was always into magic as a kid. And I would go to magic stores, and I thought I wanted to be a magician. You're 13, you don't know what you want to be. But I went to a magic store and I found a book on makeup effects. And it was sort of, it was pretty amazing because it was sort of one of those, one of those moments, those aha moments where it felt like a magic trick on the skin, fooling people by doing makeup effects on people. So that book was pretty much life-changing for me. And I took the book home, bought some basic materials they had at the magic shop, and just started practicing on my friends and my mother and, my family, making them my victims. And, of course you start with the easy stuff, all the gore, all the horrible stuff, that I used to make my friends up, and we'd go out to a busy street and we'd throw a bike on top of them and stop traffic. we were pretty horrible human beings as kids, but, and, people would freak out and go and call the cops, and we'd run away and things. But that's sort of like my humble beginnings. And then, I went to film school and everything. And, because my mother said I had to go to college for a backup career. So I thought a film degree was a great backup career, which at that age is pretty idiotic, So once I was done with film school, a friend of mine was working at a shop called Steve Johnson's X Effects, and he said they were needing people, and I got like a basic, minimum wage paying job there, and that's how it all started. And I started my own company in 2005. So we've been in. My company's named as Autonomous Effects Incorporated, and we've been going pretty strong since.
Carson and I are huge fans, obviously, of Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
I feel like we could have an entire episode about that as well.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
We had a lot of stuff in that didn't see the light of day, which was sad, but
wow,
that's how it always rolls.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Ryan and I, when we were just doing background on the three of your respective careers, it's really interesting because the three of you all kind of come from distinct backgrounds, and then you kind of come together for this collaboration of Pam and Tommy. Prior to the three of you working on this show, was there any collaboration together between the three of you before? Did you know of each other, or was it when you guys showed up to work on Pam and Tommy, that was the first time that you guys met?
When we first started on Pam and Tommy, I was the origination point from one of the producers had called me, and I was working on another show at the time, and he called me to see if I knew of anybody that might have the skill set to do the show. And I said, yeah, I do. I want to do it. And he said, you're on a show. And I said, I've never left a show, but I think this is big enough. This is my wheelhouse, and I'm willing to leave the show to do it. Consequently, Jason had already left that show, and had gone on to do other things as well. We were all it was pandemic time, 2 years on one thing, it takes its toll. And so I called Jason and Barry immediately after I talked to the producer, and he said, no, if you want to do it, done deal. And literally they were my next two calls. I called them immediately.
And I had worked with David just here and there on different shows in LA, day playing and whatnot, but I always loved David and knew his work. And I had worked with our producer before on my first job when I moved to LA, because I came from New York. I lived in New York for 15 years. So I've only been in LA for 3. And the producer for this show was my first producer when I came here. So it was a natural kind of gathering of all of us.
So then on the show, what did that collaboration specifically look like?
As makeup department head, I was in charge of the complete makeup look. And Jason and I worked very closely together in the design of Pam and Tommy with the prosthetics. We dialogued a lot. We had another lady, Jennifer Aspinall, who I've worked with a number of times as well, who came in with us on those initial designs and was working with us. And we were all collaborating together. So we had as many eyes on it as I possibly could of people I trusted to begin the process of restructuring Lily James.
And throughout the entire piece, David and I talked daily about every new character, everything that was, every element of the design that you saw on camera, we would discuss at great length. And those were always ongoing conversations, because a lot of their work affected my work and ultimately helped my work, and vice versa. So we always were talking through the details of every day's work to make sure that we could work in tandem to make it look as good as possible.
I think that work is showed really well when episode 1 begins. Right away we get a shot of a television back in the 90s, and it's Jay Leno and Pamela talking. And I know right away for myself, I literally thought it was them talking. I thought this was archival footage. And sure enough, we've got an incredible makeup job. Do you want to talk specifically about the makeup? We've only seen a little bit of them so far, but the makeup that you did to capture Jay Leno.
I was very lucky to, on that day, have Jennifer come back. And coincidentally, Jennifer and I did the last 3 years of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Wow. And so it was like being back at the NBC studios. And Jason can speak to, we resculpted the piece a couple of times for Jay. And that was probably my most favorite makeup day with Lily.
Yeah, that was an interesting one because when you start getting into designing these characters that are based off of people that are also living and still in the zeitgeist and everything, you get fearful of somebody seeing your work and thinking that you made a caricature out of them or something like that. So, the first go around we had on Jay, the actor's name, and I always forget this. I'm sorry, David, what was the actor's name?
Adam Ray. Adam Ray. And
yeah.
Jen and I had worked with Adam on Mad TV as well.
Right. And so we went ahead and got his live cast and we started sculpting on it. And the first clients that we made, we essentially did what everybody does. You go for that chin. And what we realized early on in our first test was the chin, we can't do the chin alone because that's what really makes him caricature-y, makes it look like somebody who's drawing him at a carnival, essentially. And it may look good from straight on, but it won't look good from profile. And it just looks much more like a cartoon. So what we realized we needed to do was sculpt the whole cheeks all the way up to just under his eyes and everything, and incorporate all this because we had to change where his jawline was essentially, and sort of cheat the jawline just a little bit, and also thicken up the chin a little bit. But mostly it's all in the cheeks, which was a surprise to me. And once we got that down, me and Jen and Dave Snyder went ahead and attacked it. We laid the appliance down and we did a lot of character building with highlights and shadows as well to get him where he needed to be, as well as fake eyebrows. And then Barry provided that amazing wig, which really sort of tied the whole thing together.
Working with Adam DeSeth and Nick Offerman, I mean, two of the best comedic talents. What was that process like working with them? Because it seems like, was it just a wig transformation for them? And what else did you guys do to make them come to life?
Well, we had to balance out what we had done on Sebastian and Lily with the supporting characters or the rest of the principal characters to make sure they were all within the same world. So because we were kind of taking liberties with those characters and not doing historical recreations, we were able to choose the elements of the design that would take them to the same level as Lily and Sebastian. So for Nick and Seth, I mean, a lot of that was their hair, which immediately took them to a different place. And then once they had those looks set, then, David also complemented those with his work, but it wasn't prosthetics on either of them. It was more creating well-balanced characters that fit into the world.
In creating characters with makeup, it's always lines and shapes. And so it's, putting together a geometry puzzle. What works to make this person look more rough or look more, in the case of Mr. Mullally, he'll always be Megan's husband to me. We needed to keep him looking a little sleazy because he needed to represent the underbelly of the porn world in the Valley in Los Angeles during that period. So, it wasn't putting a lot of makeup on, but it's strategically putting lines here and there, roughing up the texture of the skin, keeping the sideburns long, allowing the facial hair to look slightly unkept, but yet done in a way. Like there's a shape, there's a goatee there that's reminiscent of the time period, but it's not necessarily done. It's colored to match the hair that Barry has done. And with Seth, similar types of things, coloring sideburns and his hair to his eyebrows to match the right color tone of the wig, keeping when he was game and immediately in our first conversation said, yeah, absolutely, we'll shave the beard, because they didn't want him to be seen as we're accustomed to seeing Seth. And he was 100% on board for that. Also being representative of somebody who, as a carpenter, oftentimes is out in the sun, a little bit weathered look on the skin, just very, again, less is more in those situations. I wish we did more because he's such a great guy. I'd like to have spent more time with him in the makeup chair, had him captive for like an hour, but he was pretty quick. But it's finding those minor details that are effective in creating the overall look that you're trying to achieve.
Any other things, Jason, that you were able to capitalize for those two?
No, I didn't really. My main concentration was on Pam and Tommy, and the sort of characters that would come in and out. So Barry and David pretty much handled Seth and Nick. Although I love Nick Offerman and Seth Rogen, and I would have loved to have covered their faces in prosthetics, but it wasn't to be on this one.
So let's get into that then. Obviously, everyone from Jimmy Kimmel to People Magazine have covered this incredible transformation that we've got going on between Lily James and Sebastian Stan, two incredible actors that are already pretty attractive, I would say, but you're capturing this different look. I remember when some pictures were surfacing of Lily James transforming to Pamela Anderson. It was a bit crazy. The two didn't connect right away, but then as soon as more and more pictures started to pile in, I was like, this works. They're doing an incredible job. So much so went into that, even behind the scenes, knowing breast appliances, certain things that you did with the forehead, teeth. What was that process like, having to transform Lily James first specifically? What was that like for you guys?
Well, we were transforming, the upside of the transformation is it's one beautiful woman into another beautiful woman. So we have symmetry and certain elements of shape in her jaw in our favor. That the hairline being different had to be recreated. The brows, notably, those are considerably different. Covering that with the forehead gave us the ability to apply the brows. But it really, once we had the elements of structure there, the paint was easy to create because we had a very good canvas in Lily. There wasn't, when it came to the corrective part of makeup, which is what we call the highlight and shadow part of it, which is changing the shape and form with the prosthetic that's already been applied, we weren't correcting anything in Lily. What we were correcting is the structure of the face to make it correct for Pam. And Lily had great structure for us to work with there. And Sebastian is an incredibly good looking guy. So we always had to give him, it was a balance of rocker versus movie star. We always had to keep him in the rocker lane, not the movie star lane.
Yeah, my process starts when I get a live cast of the actor, and Lily was working in London at the time, so I had a colleague over there grab the live cast of her full head and her chest, obviously, and ship that over to us here in the States so that we can start early, so that me and David could take a look at it, have it physically in my shop, and just really examine it and take a look and see what we were dealing with. And right off the bat, we knew there were some intrinsic challenges to the whole thing with regards to, when you look at Lily, you don't immediately think Pamela Anderson. They don't really on face value share a lot of the same attributes. But once you really start to break that down, you look at jawline, you look at profile, you start to find the similarities, and you start to find what you can build off of. And that's the most important thing with the magic trick, so to speak, is you have to find the things that they have in common with the person that you're going to be making them into. And with Lily, she really had a great jawline. She pretty much has the same exact jawline, in profile as Pam almost. I mean, Pam's got a little bit of a more wide set back jaw, but we were able to sort of anchor into that. And once we realized that we needed to cover the eyebrows, and we didn't want to just do brow block talking and a crease in the middle of the forehead. We realized that we wanted to cover those up completely, but we also know the structure of the forehead needed to change slightly, because if you look at Pam's got a lot more real estate between her eyebrows and her hairline than Lily does. Lily's a little bit more closed down. So by opening that up, we were able to cover the eyebrows, put the lace eyebrows on, give her that sort of forehead, that same forehead that Pam has in silhouette, profile straight on. And then that gave Barry the opportunity to take that hairline back a little farther back and sort of expose that real estate, so to speak. And the teeth were helpful as well, and able to push her lips out ever so slightly to give her a much more fuller look. We were able to do that underneath the lips rather than on top of the lips, because if you do an appliance on top of the lips, you know, you're always sort of going to be fighting that wear and tear throughout the day. And that adds also more time in the chair. So being able to push her lips out just slightly, a little bit more, was a little bit of a trick with those teeth. And then, you know, and then a lot of magic from Barry with those beautiful wigs.
And because they were all custom wigs, we were able to, you know, shape the hairline on her wigs to match that of Pam, so that once we did set the wigs on further back, because the hairline had been covered, we were able to really create that same shape on the forehead, which ultimately is the selling point in this look. When you look at Lily's profile with the prosthetic and the wig, it completely changes her.
It's just such an incredible transformation. And one thing I did want to ask each of you, because I can only imagine that since it does feel like a monumental task in achieving these looks, because they are these historical figures in such an important time within the industry, what would you say is the biggest challenge that each of you faced during the production and this process of their transformations?
Mine was working with Barry and David. I mean, that was a huge challenge.
Yeah, let's start there. That was our hardest thing.
I'll let those guys start.
I think the biggest challenge was trying to make sure that we were authentically recreating these people and not doing costume work and not doing things that were caricatures of people who are still alive and who are very recognizable. That's the worst mistake I think you can make in any sort of biopic or bio series, is to try to go 2000% and not take into consideration what your actor really looks like and what they're capable of looking like, because ultimately they have to do their job and perform through all of our work, and we never want them to be fighting that. So finding that balance throughout is really important to the success of the look, ultimately.
I think in creating any of these looks, one of the things that is always a challenge just in the physicality of the look is making sure that nothing that we do pulls the audience out of the moment and pulls the actor out of their process. So we want to make sure everything we're doing is actually enhancing this. And so it's a lot of it is an editing process of picking and choosing what works, and those things that are marginal you don't do. Well, if there is an angle that something doesn't work in an appliance, you don't use it, because we're not doing two-dimensional forms. This is not a stationary picture. It is a moving video picture. So our form needs to be recognizable from all angles, and we see them 360 in this. So we have to make sure that everything that we do in shape and form and function, I think that's always the biggest challenge when you're creating these silhouettes and complete characters that are head-to-toe transformations. Lily literally was covered head to toe with wig, paint, fingernails, everything. Like there wasn't a stitch of Lily that wasn't touched. And that's why it took and oftentimes even more than that, 4+ hours to do that sort of a transformation. And what a trooper she was in the process. I mean, she was lovely and also an incredible student of Pam in that 4 hours that she was sitting in the chair or standing and being painted, constantly watching videos, constantly studying her dialogue with her dialogue coach. She was really always perfecting her craft while we were perfecting ours.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest challenge when you do these kind of shows really comes down to, the initial conversations with producers. And that's, that slow realization when a producer and a director sort of realizes that this is indeed a hair and makeup show. And, that doesn't always resonate with producers right off the bat. And, you know, the simple fact that we had supportive producers and directors that you know really wanted to get this right was already, it sort of already primed the way for success with the makeups. And you know, the fact that we were able to do as many tests and you know, many film tests and resculpts that we needed to do to get it right, that says a lot about people who are all behind the cameras, you know, wanting us to embody these characters, wanting us to help the actors embody these characters and give them the assets that they could use. And you know, that's always the sort of challenge right out the gate. But once you sort of get through that door, and you know, and David's actually really quite good with negotiating with for more time with producers and directors. He's quite convincing. So you know, having a department head that's really, you know, that sort of gives an umbrella to a department is a fabulous thing. And that's always the first hurdle. And then, you know, you go into wanting to make the naturalistic approach, and you do the work that you know that you can get to, as long as you have all the forces on your side. And we did for this particular project, and it was really, really nice. And that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you're battling all the way uphill all the time. And this was not that at all. I mean, the work was hard enough. It was nice that we had the support behind us.
Because so often producers don't quite understand what goes into creating a look, especially a period look. They assume that, you know, we're hair and makeup people, we do it on the day and everyone gets transformed and there's no prep work because this is what we do.
Right.
So sometimes it's trying to inform them. And the more I do this, I'm realizing that, you know, the more information that you share with your producers up front, you know, the better chance you have of getting what you need, because they don't necessarily realize what goes into creating some of these period shows.
And we had a real advocate in Chip Vucelich, who was the producer that brought me on, having with Barry and I both having relationships with him and him trusting us. He was always willing to go to bat for us, to give us the resources that we needed. And that's critical in order to do it. Just touching on what Jason said, I realized my negotiating skills in these situations were pretty good a few years ago. I was at a Christmas party and I wound up getting caught in a battle of wills between a Bachelor cast off and an editor from Ms. Magazine, when after #MeToo, the Bachelor cast off said something to the effect of, well, you know, women are responsible for this really too. And Ms. Magazine lady wanted to throw him off the balcony of the apartment we were in. And I said, maybe there was a better way to say it. And so I started to have a conversation with the two of them. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, when I was leaving the party, the editor said to me, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a makeup artist. And she said, that's interesting. I thought you were a hostage negotiator. Transferable skills.
That's great.
Much one and the same.
Well, it sounds. I love hearing this background information, because any good project, I feel like there is a great collaboration between not just the director and then the lead star. It's everyone, and you've got some incredible directors on this show. Craig Gillespie is one of Ryan and I's favorite directors working today. He's got a great vision, and he's an original filmmaker. He creates stories that are authentic, and then on top of that too, you know, you get to work with the brilliant Lake Bell. I mean, just one of the finest directors working today as well. For you guys specifically, these are the first 4 episodes that we've seen this series. First 3 directed by Craig. And then this most recent episode directed by Lake. What was it like working with them? Was there differences between the two of them and the way that they were approached, the 3 of you?
I've always said that it was probably more difficult for them to work with us than us to work with them, because we're the consistent pieces. And the devil's always in the details, and we're the 3 little devils.
And, you know, you have a situation where Craig set the tone for the piece, and his style of directing is very, unique, and it's very specific, and he's also a man. So he's looking at the story from a different perspective than Lake was. So Lake's job is to come in and match the tone, but also bring her own voice to the piece. And I think that both of them did a great job of balancing that. But I think it was nice also to see Lake come in as a female, and to have that perspective, especially in episode 4, dealing with the issues that were dealt with, because I think she was able to kind of override the general tone Craig had set in certain moments to bring a more compassionate female perspective to the piece.
And my mother, after watching episode 4, she said, you know, I actually even might have slightly teared up at the end. And I was like, we have cracked Mount Rushmore.
What are you saying about your mom? Is she a cold-hearted woman?
She's German.
I say no more. I will say that, you know, working with Craig was, you know, an interesting thing because, you know, I'm a fan like you guys, you know, I was a fan coming into it and of his work, and, you know, he's a guy that can sort of bring a lot of heart to these sort of characters, you know, sort of he can really sort of saddle both the sort of like bombastic sort of behavior and lifestyle with the sort of real heart underneath it all. And I think, I mean, just look at I, Tonya with that, you know, it's who would have ever thought that, you know, that would have been, that those characters really seeing sort of where they come from and everything, and that they're sort of their intimacy and their intimate moments and everything, and watching that, and you're like, oh, I've got a different perspective of the whole Tonya Harding thing, you know. And that was like one of those eye-opening moments. So knowing that he was coming onto this, it was like, oh, that makes perfect sense, right, for a project like this, you know, to really have a guy that, you know, have a director that really can sort of saddle both of those things. And, you know, he's not an easy director, and that's not saying anything negative. He definitely wants to shoot everything everywhere and not be relegated to certain angles and certain light and certain things like that. So that was one of those things that during those makeup tests, making sure that everything was blended, everything it could be shot from all angles, because as you see with the show, there's a lot of cool camera work going on, and there's a lot of, like, you know, especially with the video and things like that, there's no limitations of where you can or can't put these actors. So that's something that really sort of, you know, that was really nerve-wracking at the beginning. But you know, the fact that we were able to, like I said before, do so many tests and get it down and know that it looks right from every angle and every light was helpful.
I'm curious too, because I think it's one thing for Carson and I to sit back and watch the show and just be mind blown by your work and really enjoy it. And then for you guys who actually have crafted these characters, what is it like seeing the reaction? I know we talked about it a little bit already, but the overwhelming reaction to your guys' work, it's brilliant. So what is it like seeing that weekly now, everybody just consistently being blown away, and just a reaction to you guys and your hard work?
I love it. I mean, this is, I mean, you know, I make no bones about it. I love it.
I love
it. You know, we're all too often, as behind the scenes people, below the line people, we're somewhat forgotten and, you know, occasionally underappreciated and underestimated. I hope that all of this positive attention will help to elevate an entire world of artisans and craftsmen in this industry in the eyes of producers. And hopefully it will educate an audience into a little bit about the behind the scenes things that happen in order to get it to look the way that it does on screen. I think a lot of people that have approached me and that have heard these podcasts or read interviews, you know, it's pretty much a common theme that they didn't understand the intricacies that are involved. You know, my brother even said to me, who, you know, is familiar with what I do, he goes, it's almost like you three are engineers in a way. Like you're putting together something like an engineer thinks about something. He said, it's really, I wouldn't have thought about it in such technical ways until I've seen this volume of press and read it and have a better understanding of actually what you do in Hollywood.
And like David said, I think we're shedding light on what truly goes into making some of these transformation pieces, whether it's a period piece or if it's a contemporary piece with lots of special effects. So often the focus, and rightfully so, is placed on the actors and the directors and their contribution to the work. And they ultimately bring our work to life. So we all have to work together. But without the work of the below the line people and those of us who kind of design and craft these looks, a lot of these period pieces and transformational period pieces, they wouldn't have a life, you know, they wouldn't be able to do what they do. And so often our work is overlooked because people just assume, oh, you know, they put that on every day. It's just part of their costume. And this amount of press is really breaking down what goes into creating this, and that this is a craft, this is a profession, this is something that we have all studied and trained for a long time. And you know, it's time for people to realize that and to maybe put a little bit more attention on it.
Yeah, I you know, just to sort of echo those sentiments, I mean, I agree with that. You know, it's really nice to be able to share your craft with the world. And for, you know, a lot of times when you go into these projects, you're kind of, you know, from a director standpoint or from a producer standpoint, you know, it's always like at the very beginning of something, sometimes you're looked at more as like, oh, they want to do what? They want to do this, they want to do that, you know, and, you know, until it's almost like you're trying to convince everybody every time you start a new project that this is the way to go, or this is the, you know, this is the best way to do it. And in a time where filmmaking is going really fast right now, I mean, it's like, you know, the pre-production times are less, the shooting is less, the post-production is less. I mean, the fact that from when you start to when you see something out in the market, it's really fast now. And, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, that don't want to slow down and actually sort of do the craft the way that it could be. And I mean, a lot of producers may have just said, let's just put a wig on her. You know, it's just about the essence of Pam. It doesn't have to look exactly like her. And in a circumstance like this, that would have been a grave mistake, you know, because it would have taken the audience out of it. You know, it wouldn't have allowed access into the story. And the fact that you can share your craft with the world and tell a story through makeup and hair and help to develop an actor, develop a character. I mean, you know, those are one of those sort of fleeting opportunities from time to time. You know, you don't always get that support, and it's nice that the show is getting this kind of press. And more importantly, it's nice that, you know, people are enjoying the makeup so much so that they want to research it and sort of see things that we've done with the press and interviews and how we've done it. And David's right, you know, David's brother's right. We are engineers, you know, that's how I look at every makeup. You know, it's like, it is a magic trick, but it's also, I have to engineer, you know, three-dimensional things in order to make it work and to make it look right, you know. And so showing that process, shining a light on that process, hopefully showing new filmmakers, existing filmmakers, that what is possible with the right amount of support behind you is a good thing. And I think that this can only be a positive thing for our craft.
And our creators of the show, Rob Siegel and D.V. Vicente, were really behind us all the way. They were
fantastic.
Our greatest cheerleaders. When they saw, early on, Rob said to me, like, you far exceeded anything we dreamed was possible with this. Because I kept telling them, we'll get her there. We can get more than the essence. We will get, I see Pam Anderson and Lily James. And I said it to Lily the first day we met in Jason's studio at Autonomous. That was our first meeting, was right there. And we did a few things, and it wasn't really a test. It was just testing colors and this and that, and just things, pieces, not even trying to put it together. And she was nervous, and I said, she's there. I'm telling you, right? I see her. I see her. And when we were at our premiere party at DV's house, small get together, when it first, right before it launched, she and I were talking, and she said, I remember it. She said, you always had faith. I said, no, I always saw her. And I think it's why I had such an affinity for this, because I saw I knew that she could come to life, and I knew she was in there. And we did part of the work. I mean, and this is the football analogy for the weekend is, we're the quarterbacks, we're the architects of it. But we passed the ball off to our receiver, Lily, and she ran it across the goal line.
That's the perfect way of describing it.
David with the football analogy. How timely, man. Wow.
I know. Pretty good.
Butch.
How unexpected.
Okay.
From the most unlikely source.
Do we have a pick for the Super Bowl? Is it the Rams?
Oh, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
I think it's the 49ers, right?
I don't know. We'll go for the Rams because we're in LA.
Perfect.
I could care less. They could all win. Give them all a trophy for all I care.
We know you guys will be getting a trophy here within the next year too. But
from your mouth to God's lipstick.
The last thing that I do want to touch on is within episode 4, we see kind of this, I don't know, I don't want to exactly say a precursor to what we're going to see in the future, because we do see a little bit of it. And that's Pamela becoming kind of the barbed wire era. I want to ask a little bit about what that transformation is like, because it's a different look. I know that she had to do some things a little bit differently. What can we expect when we see kind of full barbed wire era of Pamela, and anything else throughout the rest of the series to look forward to with your guys' work?
The look that was the part of the barbed wire look, what originated from the barbed wire look, is the look that Alexis Vogel created, who was Pam's makeup artist shortly after she came to Playboy, that created the look that we know of as Pam, with the dark smoky eye and the light lips and the hairstyles that we're very familiar with. We actually have a slight homage to Alexis throughout our show, which was very important to me. And this was where Rob and DV indulged and said, absolutely, because it was important to give credit where credit is due. She created this Baby Bardot look. And so we have you'll notice there is, anytime around Pam in the behind the scenes things, you'll see a curly redhead, and that's our nod to Alexis, who passed away a few years ago. So that look grew out of that. And you will even notice when you look at the posters, as it was in real life, the posters and the images of barbed wire that were out were a little bit different than how she looks in the show. And we also kind of replicate those very subtle differences as well. But it is a slight exaggeration and a slightly harder look of the Baby Bardot look that Alexis created. She also, I believe, did barbed wire as well, but it's really kind of giving some oomph to that because of the character that she plays. She's a tough girl.
What's interesting about that is we actually shot the stills for the cutouts that you see in her agent's office early in the series. We shot that before Lily was even on camera, before her first day of work. We did it on a Friday afternoon. We had been testing her looks, and they were like, while we're here, let's just put together the barbed wire look quick. Can you guys do that? And we were like, sure. So we're like, we're gonna need 2 hours and we'll have her back to you for these photos. And so we did it, and we created it on that day, and we had all the tools we needed and went and shot those photos very, very early on in the process. And then they became the cutouts that you see in the agent's office, and then also at the premiere barbed wire later on in the series.
The final thing I'll ask, and this is something that Carson and I love to do on the podcast. We love to spread information specifically to aspiring filmmakers and to aspiring artists who maybe have trouble and don't know where to start when trying to pursue what they want to. So for each of you, do you have a specific piece of advice that you could give to anybody listening, to any aspiring artist who wants to pursue a career within the film industry?
I have 2 mantras that I often use and often live by. the first I learned from a mentor in real estate about doing things was to show up, to tell the truth, and try not to be emotionally attached to the result. If you show up and you're prepared and you're educated, you have the knowledge in what you want to do, and you tell the truth, then if you try to not be emotionally attached, if you try not to make those decisions geared towards having an emotional attachment, I really want this, but if you just let the chips fall where they may, that is probably what should be. And then I also always like to say, be pretty if you can, be witty if you must, but be gracious if it kills you. From Elsie to Wolf.
That's
incredible.
I think the best thing that you can do when you're younger and trying to get into anything is just surround yourself in your craft so that you're living and breathing it, whether you're working on the projects that you hope to work on yet or not. I think by manifesting that world around you, that's what I have always done. And the universe has always just brought things to me. So by continuing to work on my craft in my own time, my free time, and then take as many jobs as I can, whether they pay or not. When I was younger, you know, immersing myself in that world ultimately manifested the career that I have now, because you meet people, you network, and like David said, if you show up and you're kind and you're gracious and you're prepared, that goes a long way, because people will see that, they respect it, and they want to have you come back again. And through that networking and the connections that you make by showing up, you know, it can lead to a lifelong career in this industry.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I would have to say, love what you do. I mean, you have to love this, and you have to love this in a very, very deep way. My thing is kind of the opposite a little bit, not to counter what David is saying, but I get emotionally attached to a lot of the stuff that I do because I love what I do. And this business is brutal, and it is a brutal business. And, you know, you're going to have your heart broken and stepped on, and they're not going to shoot something, or it's going to end up on the cutting room floor for whatever reasons, you know, for whatever those reasons. But it didn't take away that love that you put into it, that passion that you have. And I think that's the thing that you have to protect the most in this business, because that is the thing that gets you up at the crack of dawn and keeps you working those 17, 18-hour days and getting up 4 hours later and doing it all over again. And you're going to meet people you don't like, and you're going to work with people you don't like, and it's going to be hard, and they're going to try to take away that love. And you have to build an iron cage around it, and you have to get, even if the project isn't as successful as you wanted it to, you still have to remember that flame is there, and that you have to learn the lessons that the project taught you to get that love out of it, and say, okay, on the next one, I'll approach it from this way. Because the trickiest thing isn't the work. The work is lovely, and it's amazing, and it's what we want to do. The trickiest thing are the people and the egos, and, you know, and time. You know, those are the trickiest things. And if you sort of build that iron cage around your heart, and you learn, oh, I'm going to get this out of it. And I think that's the most important thing. It is for me anyway.
And you have to realize that the producers can't, you know producers and creative
advice.
Sorry,
Jason, you're cutting out there.
Oh, I was? Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, I was just saying, you know,
you have to just repeat that advice all over again. Sorry.
Oh shit.
Not all of it.
No, I look at the end of the day, my point is, you have to love what you do, and you have to protect it. And, you know, the thing is people are going to, you know, there's egos and attitudes, and, you know, you're always up against the time clock. And, you know, at the end of the day, even if something isn't successful as Pam and Tommy, and something ended up on the editing room floor, or somebody chose not to shoot something, you still have to know that you got something out of that, that you know, that it meant something to you, and that you can grow from that for the next one. You know, why was that unsuccessful, or why did that not make it, or I did, you know, a lot of times those are out of your hands. But, you know, I mean, I just think that, we all get about our craft, and fuck that,
And protecting that love.
Did I freeze up there, or am I not supposed to say fuck that?
Well, we heard it again.
Yeah. Well, look, at the end of the day, man, just love what you do, and show up, be nice, and most importantly, I guess the only piece of advice that I really have is love your colleagues. Support your colleagues. Because those are the people that lift you up. Those are the people that can keep you working. Those are the people that keep inspiring you. People that you're in that ditch with, fighting, going day to day to work with. Those are the people that are going to be there with you for a very, very long time. And it's a very small business. So treat them with grace and respect. And that's the most advice I give a lot of advice there, I guess. So I'm done.
Great though. What else were you going to add there, Barry?
Oh, I was just going to speak to protecting that love, because when I wake up every morning, I'm filled with joy, passion, and love for going to work. I absolutely look forward to it. It's the people that you encounter when you get to work that try to diminish that joy and that love. And they try to break down your craft. And as artists, in any medium, we have to protect our art and our craft. We have to make that the priority, and to not only show it through our work, but how we show up to work. And it's challenging. I mean, it's hard as it can be, but there's nothing greater than seeing your work come to life and seeing that love and joy on camera for the world to see. So protecting it at all costs is super important.
You can see in all of our conversations here, so much of the talk is about the collaborative effort. It is about the people that make the project. And that really is, I think, resounding in everything that we've said. We're the leaders of teams of incredibly talented, incredibly smart, incredibly dedicated artists in Jennifer Aspinall, Mo Meinhardt, Abby Lyle Clausen, Dave Snyder, Bill Meyer, Erica Adams, George Guzman. Like, these people are all around us who are helping create the visions that we have to come to life. And it is that incredible collaborative effort and the seamless working together in order to achieve a common goal, with when we all have egos, but setting our egos aside in order to create that. When we're in the trenches with it, and this was one of those rare moments of lightning in a bottle. We're all on an even playing field, from the creators of the show to the additional makeup artists that we bring in. Everybody in this project was valued, was important, and was necessary, and knew it. It was, the feelings that when you are in a situation where you're valued and you're important, it makes you go the extra mile. And from our top down, we had that. And I believe that we all helped to also continue to cultivate that among our teams.
And I will add that, just as a closing note, that David and Barry are actually two of the finest department heads I've ever worked with, because they do know how to protect a department and know how to get what's needed and to create an environment for everybody to do the best they possibly can. And that's not me, kissing your guys' butts. It's true. I've had a lot of time to think about it. So
there's a reason you were my first call, Jason.
Well, I say such nice things like that, and you keep me out of Home Depot, which is great. Go back to the paint department.
I used to mix paint at a hardware store, a True Value hardware store, and I actually loved it. It taught me all about color theory, and
absolutely,
it didn't always turn out right, but I loved putting all those colors in that can.
I'm spending a lot of time at Home Depot right now because I'm getting ready to remodel my house.
I love how it all comes.
It's like a commercial for Home Depot. Or
yeah, right.
That's right.
Paid sponsor on this. Yeah. Well, just like the three of you started this podcast off talking about your beginnings and kind of how it led you to the show, I think it's incredibly virtuous that you're able to share advice that is all three so different as well, but at the same time so important everything that you guys shared, I think it resonates with Ryan and I, and hopefully the people listening on some level. So we appreciate you sharing that and kind of uncovering. And I know we just kind of scratched the surface for what you guys were able to accomplish on this show, but to peel back some of the layers of Pam and Tommy, because it is truly incredible. Next week we'll try and uncover a little bit more. We're gonna have Tommy Lee's third leg on the show. Talk a little bit, but seriously though, guys, it was an honor to talk with the three of you and get a little bit of the behind the scenes. This was true honor.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.